episode 2 of our practical camping series video. If you watched my previous episode, we talked about the different questions that we need to ask ourselves before we even think about buying those camping products. So if you did watch that video, hopefully that helped you narrow down the product options. In this episode, we're solely going to discuss everything about tents. We'll start from that, and on the succeeding episodes, we'll go through the different areas of the campsite, being your bedding, toilet and bath, your kitchen and living, and all that sort of areas. So this episode is focused on tents only. So one of my questions in my previous episode was, what sort of camping style are you going to be doing the most, and how long are you going to be camping for? The most common options for overlanding would be your swags, stuff like your 30-second tents, maybe your pop-up tents as well, or your rooftop tents. But you'll find the most common of them all would be your swag. The main reason is that it's the cheapest and the easiest way to set up as well. For your short-term camping, you can pretty much use the same tents as you would for overlanding. But there are two particular setups that I want to mention. The first one is the gazebo. Gazebo nowadays come with a lot of accessories. You can get like a pod or a hub, which is basically your tent. You can get solid walls for it. You can get inner mesh room or a solid room, or you can combine different accessories and make this whole gazebo into your sleeping and living space at the same time. The other setup that we have ourselves is the awning tent, the awning and the awning tent. And like the gazebo, you can get a whole lot of accessories for your awning, obviously your tent, your mesh tent, your walls, and again, like the gazebo, you can combine different accessories and make this into your all-in-one sleeping and living space. The only drawback with the awning tent or the awning setup is once everything's laid out or connected, you can't drive your vehicle. The most common for long-term camping are your full-size tents. Let's discuss the different types of full-size tents. How do you pick which tent is suitable for your purpose? So think about size and shape to start with. How big do you need? How many rooms do you need? How many people are going? And speaking of which, if you see a tent that says 6-person tent, 8-person, 10-person tent, you got to remember that that's the number of people sleeping in the tent with no other extra space around it. The shape of the tent is important as well. Dome ones are limited to the headroom on the sides of the tent, whereas the squarish ones, you have headroom. In terms of privacy, do you want different rooms that's got divisions in between, or are you happy with just one big room? One thing you need to note is if you pick a tent with different rooms with divisions in between, you need one light per room. With those divisions in place, the light would be contained within each room, so you'll end up needing one light per room. Obviously, budget will dictate which category of tent you'll fall into, but you also have to remember that with the cheaper tents, obviously it's less durable, and normally they're harder to set up. You pay a premium for those quick setup tents, but they do make a huge difference. So you'll find that obviously the more expensive the tent, the better the quality of the mesh, the zippers, the flooring and the fly, but it increases the weight of the material and thus the weight of the tent. When choosing the size of your tent, also remember that you need to allocate some extra space within the tent. So for example, if you choose a large tent, especially the ones with multi-rooms, then that in itself, you can make the middle room as your living space, meaning you may not need to spend more money on an extra tent or a gazebo solely for the purpose of living space. If you have limited budget when you start camping, then at least you don't need to think about buying that living space straight away. Come the time you are ready to buy a tent, I highly suggest you go to a shop that's got that specific tent that you want on display. It makes a huge difference because you can see exactly how it is, how big it is. You can walk in and out of the tent, check out all its features. So for example, if it's got good ventilation, check that out. It's very important to have good ventilation in a tent. as part of the design, both winter and summer. In winter, having good ventilation minimizes the buildup of moisture within the tent, which you don't want, and in summer, obviously, it is cooler. Check out all the storage available within the tent. Is there storage in each room? Also, hooks. Does it have hooks in every room? You'll need that for your lighting and for fans. How many of the entrances of the tent can you convert into awnings? Are there allocations for power cords? Regardless if you're going to go to powered sites or unpowered sites, at some point you'll need those little pockets for running cables through. Maybe you'll have solar power later on, or anything that you need to run a cable from outside of the tent. When you see tents that say 30 seconds to set up or 60 seconds or whatever, just remember that that's the time it takes to set up from flat, ready, laid out, to the time you set up the tent without the fly. Once you've finally purchased the tent that's best for you, I suggest that you buy a tab that's bigger than the floor area of your tent. So when you set up your tent, make sure you lay out the tab underneath the tent to protect it, but make sure that you fold the tab within the floor area of the tent, meaning you can't see the tab around the tent. It's underneath, but you can't see it. And the reason is when it rains, the water will land in the tab and it will seep through underneath your tent, and moisture will build up, and if you don't have a good quality tent, you get water through the floor as well. So make sure it's tucked underneath the tent, just enough to protect, and that's it. And if you need something by the entrance of the tent, then buy yourself a smaller tab to put your shoes onto, or better yet, a mesh floor, so it's a one-way thing, water won't pool on it. Before you head out camping in your brand new tent, make sure you learn how to set it up, whether in your backyard or the pack. Another tip is check all the guy ropes, all the pegs and the poles. Make sure you've got enough of those, and make sure that the ones supplied are sturdy enough for your purpose. The pegs are normally a little bit lesser quality than you want it to be, so probably need to buy better pegs, especially if you go out to the beach. You need those big sand pegs. For the poles, you'll find that tents with a lot of awnings on the sides don't supply the right number of poles to have everything set up, so you might need extra poles. For the guy ropes, normally there's enough guy ropes, but you may need thicker, better quality guy ropes. And speaking of which, I highly recommend you buy thicker guy ropes as well, because they are so versatile and so practical to have. You can convert them into a clothesline for hanging clothes. You can use them obviously to upgrade your existing guy ropes, repair stuff. You can use it, it's a rope, you can use it for anything. If you do buy extra poles, there are a few options. So you can buy the folding ones like this, that folds up into 3, that folds up into 2, and you can get the steel long heavy duty ones. They're tough, they're big, but you can't fold them, so you need to chuck them on the roof. So you got to remember that as well. These are the ones that work for us because they're so compact and light, and we've been stormed in a couple of times in different camps, and they've held up no problems. Another thing worth mentioning, which happens quite often in the campsite in the dark, is people and kids trip over your guy ropes. You can do quite a few things there. You can even just put reflective tape on the guy ropes, so because normally people walk around with torches anyway, so they get that reflection. Otherwise, you can get one of those cheap solar garden lights and stake it around where the guy ropes are. That way it's a bit multi-purpose. It kind of gives you some sort of perimeter light as well. So that concludes episode 2 of this practical camping series video. So I hope that I've helped you narrow down your options for your tent and your shelter, and I hope that you've learned some tips there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.